Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob. Alongside me is RDV. We are discussing the 1981 thriller starring Albert Finney and a ton of beautiful women in it called Looker. This is a film that Michael Crichton wrote and directed, the same guy that did Lost World, 13th Warrior, Jurassic Park, Andromeda Strain, tons of great killer stuff. It feels like a Michael Crichton film, although RDV, I will say that originally when this movie came out, it wasn't well received. It was a bit of a bomb.
Oh,
As a kid watching the show, I was intrigued because Michael Crichton has a way of drawing you in and telling a story. And that is completely true with what goes on this one. I don't care what's going on. It's a quiet film. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. What's your initial take?
well, my initial take is that I put this on the probably about the same amount as respect and level as far as the drama strain he released. If you remember that, that came out. That's real popular.
I do. We have not covered that at this point, but I do recall that.
But I hold this in high regards there. You know, even though it's like I was looking it up, it's only like a $8 to $12 million budget, but for what it is, the story is really good. And I mean, and it's scary because it reminds me of the Manchurian Candidate, or just anything that has to do with where you using trans technology to control the masses. Right now, we're seeing that with the media. I don't want to go too political in it, but guess what? This is, I hold it true today. You could still use TV to, sway the masses.
Well, one of the things about this film, Looker, 1981, again, we're discussing as people pile in the chat, is that I think with Michael Crichton, if you don't know anything about Michael Crichton, you're just used to the Jurassic World movies and the Netflix kids TV show, which is mildly passable, actually, even though Crichton's not around anymore. He passed away about 12 years ago.
Yeah.
Crichton has a scientific background. He was going to go to med school, right? So he has a way of making that stuff work. But I think what his real skill and talent is taking an idea that's scientific, and for lack of a better term, packaging it in such a way that it's digestible to the masses, where it's not hardcore like Soylent Green, for example, something we've talked about too, that deals with a topic that we get very political on, or scientific, or both. And here he just does it good enough for it to be a thriller, because you are the Albert Finney character, this Beverly Hills surgeon who has been doing some work for some of these ladies, and turns out they've been dying rather quickly, and he ends up getting framed for murder. And the first 15 minutes, a lot of this already happens. You see a woman falling to her death. You get a lot of stuff going on, but it really, really works as a thriller. Now, I had mentioned in the description that I think Looker is a bit of a comedy film, in that it's almost absurd with some of the things that go on. It draws you in, and it's that contrast between what's going on. You go, really? In the very first scene, where we see Albert Finney sitting down, and it's a part of the trailer that you tweeted out earlier today, where the incredibly gorgeous, I think that's Terry Wells, Playboy Playmate at the time. She's sitting there saying, here's a list of specs. I'm, 0.4 millimeters too wide on my nose, and I have a little spot here, and I have a mole on my rib. I need plastic surgery. And Albert Finney's like, are you effing kidding me? You're hot. And she's like, no, you've done all my friends. And he goes in and he talks to his buddy doctor for a quick consult. And he's like, am I right about doing this? And he's like, hey, if you don't, she's going to go somewhere else, and you are the best. And it's not like, ooh, we're going to pull one over it. And it's nothing like that. It's how adults would talk. So I just thought the whole opening part really sucks you in and all that too. Now, I don't know what you thought about it, but the theme song at the beginning and everything too, I'm going, man, this is an instant watch. What was your take on the beginning?
No, the beginning, everything. The music hooks you in. It's a rendition of Kim Carnes, I think that's your last name, who's singing Betty Davis' Eyes. No, this is her song. Sue, S-A-A-D, Sad, covered it. We've also heard this woman singing the theme song from Radioactive Dreams, which we covered last year.
She's got a very interesting voice, yes.
Yes, so I don't know how popular she was. I mean, obviously, it's time to change. A lot of 80s artists, unless you're like, still doing stuff into the 90s, you're forgettable. A lot of them. I never heard this song Looker before, but I've heard stuff close to it. I've heard Alice Cooper Poison, which is similar fashion with the tone and beats. But the lyrics, it's like, it fits for models. It's like, people get plastic surgery. They want to appear perfect, but they don't always end up looking that way. And I thought, like I said, his friend talked to him, like, after he's talking to the cops,
Mhm.
The guy, because he's the cop was investigating because one of his patients died. She jumped and fell off. That was got a couple more who died. Two of them died. When a car crashed, one jumped out of the window. So he's being investigated, and the guy's answering. He's like, "Well, I know. It's just like they came in." He's like, "I don't." He's like, and the guys ask him, like, "Is suicide thing?" It's like, well, not really common, but there is no after the mental thing because a lot of patients come in for surgery, and then they think it's going to improve their lives or save their marriage, and it doesn't do anything. And then yes, we saw them to get depressed, but he's like, occasionally not suicide's not all of them, but. So right away, you're like, you learn about 2 deaths, and then and just within the 10, 15 minutes, you learn that there's already like 3 patients of his came in for the exact same measurements.
Yes.
And they all ended up dead. And then you don't know if the cops are in on it or what's, who to trust,
Right.
this is a guy, he's a plastic surgeon, typical stuff, he has a rule. He doesn't date his patients, he's formal.
He's very professional, and he is the best, and he doesn't seem egotistical like you would expect most doctors to be. And I think the scene you pointed out there when the detective comes in, this guy, if you've watched a lot of 70s and 80s stuff, you've seen him. His name's Dorian Harewood. He's been in several things. I haven't seen a lot of stuff that he's in, but he has a commanding presence. He's not, just another black dude doing the black thing like, some people are pigeonholed into. This guy comes in, he's got confidence. He's up there with Albert Finney. A lot of people love Albert Finney, but we'll talk about Albert in a moment because a lot of people also don't. But I thought it's like, oh, this guy's thinking you're the one that's the killer. You need to watch out. And Albert Finney's like, no, I don't date him, like you said, to your point. But the neat thing too about it is when you watch this, it's got the theme to it's pretty neat, but it also has kind of this synthwave electronic score to it, kind of not Tangerine Dreamish if you like that sort of thing too. It really helps it, but it also I think really works because Crichton is basically one of those Hitchcock guys that was really inspired by him too. So the scene where she's looking around with her dog and if you hear lightning, we've got massive storms here over the Pine Hills Palace in Central Florida. And she gets wrapped up kind of as she's getting stung by the white flashlight, and she falls down, and it's like, that's very Hitchcockian, just the way it looks in the film.
Because she walks to hear something, she's getting ready, she's in her underwear and stuff, getting ready for a date and stuff. She goes into the door, and there's no one there, she's a flash, you see her eyes, all you see is a strobe in her eyes, and then time's gone by, she doesn't know what's going on, she hears her dog barking, she walks in her bedroom, opens the door, the dog somehow got from right where she was into the closet door.
Yes.
She doesn't know how it got there, like I said, and then that leads up, she lets the dog out, and then she walks over to the balcony, gets another flash, and then you just see her kind of spinning in the curtains. You're like, what is going on? Is she hypnotized? What you don't really know. And then she screams and then she falls. So it doesn't really look like a suicide, but you don't know because she lands in a car. And when she's also this was Tina, I think her name was the one that died.
Ooh.
Yes,
Tina.
yes, and who had just, I believe that's the one who had just been there. Another one. Yes, wait, no, I'm getting confused because there's two who fell to death in the thing. The one that died at the very beginning, she fell to death. Yep. So then later on, after he's been interviewed by cops because of 2 murders, there's a girl Tina he meets in his office. She's another looker, and she's basically, she's got sunglasses on, she's freaking out, and he lights her cigarette for her, and she's like, did you tell anybody I'm here? I'm gonna go to Chicago. And then he gets a phone call. He's like, basically the secretary's like, hey, can you let Tina know there's a line here for Chicago? She's like, how do they know I'm here? It's like, he's like, well, he's like, we go to police. Like, you can't go to the police. The police are in on it. She's freaking out. We don't know if she's a space case or what, and she goes home, but she leaves her purse behind.
Yes, so she's such a thing. Yeah, she's got a little cocaine party favor in there that he sees. Is like, all right, I got to go check her out.
Yeah, because he also sees a pamphlet. That it's from it's called, I think it's called Digital Matrix is the company or whatever. Which you know is because he knows the people. He's friends with them. Through basically through the medical field and stuff, whatever, celebrities. But yeah, he follows her to her place. He sees her up, by the ledge, and then he sees her get pushed off, and he sees a guy standing up there with shades on. And he runs upstairs. The guy's not there. So then the cops come and rescue him. He's like, well, he tells him what happened. Like, this is a BS story. And I was laughing like, well, first of all, this cops already got out for him because they found one of his cufflinks and his pen. Like,
at the very beginning. Yeah, he was being set up from the very first scene.
So it's like, man, and I don't know if this cop's in on it, on a take, or what, or if he's just honest, good cop. It's
keeps you guessing. He's not sitting there chomping on the donut like an idiot cop.
For how little reception, I guess poor reception this movie got, I don't understand why, because this is a nice thriller.
Let's talk about the scene you just mentioned here too before we move on, because I wanted to back up. This guy also, I forget his name, I'm not going to look it up, but he played a lot of B-level thugs. The guy that's got the beautiful mustache and the really bad-looking ski visor on, and it's the middle of the night. He's got that cool gun that we now know hypnotizes people.
Well, they're silver.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying they look like ski goggles to me.
Yeah.
I can't tell if that's members only. Probably not. The jacket he's on, but the lady that falls there, the stunt actress, who obviously looks very fit when she alights, that is a phenomenal fall from fourth floor or wherever it is that she was on, all the way down in slow motion. The way you see her near naked body just land on the top of that car, it looks like a real stunt person took that, smashed it up and everything. It is a tremendous piece of stunt work. And I'm serious. We talk about CGI, we talk about practical effects. This was done really well. It's like, holy crap, she took that hard and sold it. It wasn't like you heard her screaming, we watched it. And that's the beauty sometimes if you're a big Hitchcock mark, as you go. Hitchcock likes to show you stuff and you're watching as it goes on, because film being visual, those things can matter. And in here, there really is a lot of stuff that you just watch because there's not a lot of dialogue in it. It's not what I would call a very busy film with a lot of cars in the background or a lot of people talking this and that. It's the LA that I think of growing up as a kid, that I always pictured that's what it would be, kind of good weather, kind of beautiful, kind of sexy, not the way it would be presented later on, or as I got to be adult knew LA would be. But yeah, it's I agree with you totally. This movie did not seem to do too well, but as a kid watching it, you don't have to know everything that's going on, but the way they explained there too, the difference between depression and being suicidal with what he does, that's where Michael Crichton does so well in kind of streamlining some of these concepts and thoughts in conversation, that you get the nerdy part to it out of the way, where it just seems like it's casual conversation. And that's great. I think more of that could be done, and you could really treat your audience with a little bit more respect by saying, yeah, they can understand this if I put it in a way that makes sense to them. I don't have to use 50-cent words when I can use 5-cent words, because about now, Albert Finney realizes he's in the shit. He knows that something's going on and all that too. But he did have that note with the measurements on there, like you said. So that's kind of his clue. So even though he's a Beverly Hills surgeon, it's really like he's a detective himself. I mean, because that's pretty much what he does the rest of it.
Yeah.
So, the next scene's got a bunch of ladies trying on some stuff. It's a fashion shoot for some lingerie where he meets one that he knows, and they kind of have this flirty thing going back and forth. And it's so 80s. He's like, hey, you want to go with me to the blah, blah, blah? And she's like, oh, I can't really. And he's like, well, it's for the main person that does all the commercials. She's like, I can be there at six,
Yep.
He drives up in his sweet, sweet Porsche. I don't know if that's a 941, which is the poor man's Porsche, but I was like, oh, yeah, I remember the Porsche and all that. But I want to talk a little bit about Albert Finney before we get to the scene where they're partying and all that. And they meet James Coburn, who's fantastic, even though there's not much of him in this movie. I've always loved Albert Finney. We covered Wolfen, and we've mentioned him before. He was in one of the more recent James Bond movies, and I believe he passed recently. And he's done a lot of things. I've always liked him and found him to be a great actor. There's a lot of people out there, too, that go, this guy's wooden. He has no personality. He sucks. He's a talentless hack, and he just sits there and doesn't do anything. I just don't see that, but a lot of people say that. So let me ask you, what's your take on Albert Finney as an actor?
I thought it was actually really good for this. This I would hold him on with Bill Bixby. And at least for this movie, I haven't seen any more Albert Finney stuff, but this is basically this could have been a Bill Bixby movie. The level of acting. I'm not saying that. No, there's no diss towards Bill Bixby because he was Incredible Hulk. I'm not saying he's a bad actor. I'm just saying, this was it'd be a nice role for Bill Bixby or Albert Finney. Like I said, this isn't a flashy movie. It isn't like over the top, big Hollywood blockbuster. It's not like a disaster movie. This is a thriller, and this is these. Oftentimes people will go for I want to watch all the big Hollywood movies, and then they see this, it's like, I don't want to watch this. This looks kind of boring. Because, but it's actually the opposite. I mean, this was actually I looked at it and I was like, okay, it looks kind of weird. Then I watched it. I was like, dude, this is actually really interesting because you said it's a murder mystery. Mm-hmm. You don't know who is murdering what. Maybe the doctor is being set up, or maybe the doctor is the murderer and he's just good at lying. We don't know. And this is the movies that we are missing right now from cinema right now. Instead, there's no diss towards people who like superhero movies, but there's no thrillers.
I agree with you totally. There's no
horror movies,
thrillers, no science fiction thrillers. You can do thrillers with a lot of flavor, and you don't have them. You're absolutely right.
We're getting superhero movies, or we're getting horror movies, or we're getting comedies, but there's no really thrillers anymore. Stuff like going back to classes like Basic Instinct, or Disclosure, any of that stuff. There is nothing like that. Color Money, there is no thrillers. It just seems like the thrillers died off in the mid '90s, and then people we just went away from that.
Yeah,
because I feel like Hollywood's basically we're going to go for family movies, and that's it. We're not going to do anything for adults.
Yeah, I think again, we're talking about a movie that's 40 years old. It's got some notable people into it. It's got a great 80s vibe to it, which is one of the foundations of this channel, the Xtreme Movie Show, that we like covering. So when we talked about it, we said, hey, it's time for a thriller, and collecting in at just over 90 minutes. It's not a very long movie, but it feels not rushed, and it feels like it's just long enough because there's a deliberate pacing to it. It doesn't speed up or slow down too much. It's very even, and we're already pretty much through the first act where we've pretty much met most of the characters except for this next scene where we're at the dinner party that he's going to, a fundraiser or whatever. He meets James Coburn, who's the head of this multi-conglomerate thing, and they're having a conversation, and basically the reason why he's going is because he was going to get hooked up with this guy who was going to fund him so he could open up his own thing. And they just mentioned a few things. And again, that's how business is done in the real world today for the most part. And they didn't get too detailed, but it was enough of a casual conversation between adults where, again, if you were young watching it, you'd go, okay, I get what's going on. It makes sense. They have a business relationship to look forward to. They meet a woman that James Coburn brings, who happens to run this company that James Coburn mentioned, hey, I heard your name on the news today with these murderers or whatever, and they're talking about it. And he goes, well, that's weird because she runs the place. If you want to go down and check it out, that's cool. Because he goes home that night with the model that he took there as his date. Did not sleep with her, even though she was drunk. And she's like, how come you didn't make a pass of me? He's totally working her. He's going to get her by the end of the film. That's how cool Albert Finney is. But he's got a sweet crib. I'm assuming that's Malibu. And the next scene, I talked about this movie being a comedy, and I'm not making fun of women at all or models. I've known some over my lifetime that have made some money professionally. One or two names that maybe you would have heard, which we won't bring up. You just come across people, especially here in Central Florida. There's a lot of work to be done as a model if you're doing print work, everything else there. And again, at this time before computers, everything was print. You can make a substantial income modeling for the Sears catalog or being a hand model, as dumb as it sounds. But you get the scene where his date's got a photo shoot out on a beach. And what it is it's taking the idea of why these women want these perfect measurements. They didn't come with these perfect measurements because they came up with them. This algorithm that this company uses says, hey, if this woman had these measurements for her nose or her chin or her cheekbone, it would work perfectly. And an interesting thing that ties us together is this next scene seems kind of absurd. There's some people working in the van. He's sitting there watching her. She's doing take after take on the volleyball set their landing, and they're like, okay, she's got to twist her body a little bit this way. She's got to do this. She's got to do that. She can't get it right. And the director's like, I don't know what the hell to tell you. They cut it or whatever. And so all of a sudden you're getting another piece of information that clicks and makes you go, okay, I get it. What they're really trying to do is not be perfect models. The models are doing anything they can to be competitive in that industry, and that makes sense because that's human nature. But then you get Albert Finney just checking these guys out from the back of the van before they close the door, and he knows, hey, something's up. And again, this is like a Saturday afternoon. They go to the business place, Digital Matrix, to check out what's going on. So any comments on this scene here before we get inside to the evil corporation?
Yep. And he said it's this whole thing is like, you know, like I said, from beginning to end. There's very few movies that I watch, you know, without, you know, getting bored and looking down my phone, especially when you're at home. If you in a theater, I get to kind of get the same way, kind of too. But you have more pressure at home. You're like, I can just walk away. I can pause it whenever I want to come back and watch it. So like this is a movie that I recommend watching it because, you know, you may laugh, you know, some of the things, you know, but it starts off, I'd say it starts off kind of slow, kind of hokey a little bit. Towards the end is where we're halfway towards the end, and where it grips you, like about the middle of the movie. Yeah. And then when he starts learning and stuff, you know, when he, you know, after the, say right around the tour, when he gets to tour the facility with Cindy.
Yes.
Yo, that's where you're hooked in it. And then she's like, you know, because she's supposed to like go into the machine, and they learn more about this, you know, about how the machine, like, you know, it makes it 3D model of you.
Yeah.
So and then you start, so it's like, okay, so the machine doesn't really, you know, they don't need the actors and stuff, as they point out in the tour. They copy you, your voice, you know, and your looks and all stuff, and then they discard you.
So Coburn's ops manager, the lady's walking him around, and she says, well, if you sit down here and watch this commercial, I'll show you what we're doing. And so it's, you know, like a man and a woman, like on a they're like parasailing or whatever, and he's like, well, it doesn't seem like nothing happened. And as a kid, this freaked me out. I didn't know that these things would happen, and I certainly did not think of this way with commercials. I don't know why there was Pretty Woman or this or that, or why people spoke really fast or slow or whatever in commercials. And yes, it is true. All this does happen on steroids, even to this day. And so you see, she says, well, we track your eye and what you're looking for, and it sees his eye going over like the girl's private parts and everything too. And he's like, see, you're focusing on her, not on the product we're trying to sell you. And our computer will change this up to make it right, because they're working on the artificial intelligence. And to your point, while that's going on, his partner, the lady model, she's like, you mean you'll pay me $200,000 a year to do nothing? She's like, yeah, all we got to do is get like a body scan. And this was a really cool scene where she goes into the big thing. She's nude, beautiful woman, natural. They're not trying to like be gratuitous or anything like here. They just dump her down in her. You see her basically, it's almost like out of a James Bond opening sequence with the naked ladies with the lights on, because they're scanning her body to make a model, synthesize her voice, and that's it. And to make commercials with it. This is one of those movies where you can look back on, go, hey, even though he did Westworld, you know, like several things that some people, Arthur C. Clarke, Robert Heinlein, predicted came true. You make enough predictions, some are, but Crichton was really pressing with this stuff because that's what happens today. And it is neat because it turns into basically the thriller part where he gets chased, mustache guy, you know, basically tries to take him out, but he's able to worm his way back into the big place. There's one big thing going on. And the main subplot is that the person that's getting ready to run for like senator or president or whatever like that, he was getting ready to do surgery on, but they were going to use this stuff on it to possibly control the president, like you said, like a Manchurian candidate. And that's not the heavy emphasis at all of this movie, but it's implied on there. So you can look at it. This goes all the way up to these levels, but it's just a fun watch. There's not a shock value to it. There's no aha at the end. It just is what it is. It's really great.
The other reason the little 38 special is it looks like the little guns are using, the pistols are using, or
they make like a weird sound, yeah.
Oh, they put like weird looking silencers on them. These look like homemade stuff. Because I don't think they have silencers, you know, for those kind of guns back then. Maybe they did, I don't know. But they looked really weird, and like even then, like if you're gonna fire those guns inside a building, people are gonna hear the shot.
Yeah.
But yeah, it said like all the way through this, and then you get the overall theme is basically like technology is a tool. It can be used for good, it can be used for bad.
Exactly.
And it's
just a tool.
Just like Andromeda Strain, and same thing. Science can be, it can be bad or it can be good, depending on who's controlling and using what. And so I love Michael Crichton's movies. They have a overall theme to it. Jurassic Park, don't play God.
Exactly. Well, that's a great thing, because here, he's not a Superman guy. Yeah, he's an expert in the field. I'm not gonna, just because he's white collar, I don't think we write him off as not being a smart individual or somebody that hasn't spent a lot of time sacrificing to learn his craft. No matter what we might think of plastic surgeons, he's not like a used car salesman that we go, yeah, anybody can sell cars. It's not entirely true, but we hold that to a higher standard. That's why it works on Jurassic Park and Andromeda Strain. They have that kind of credibility being an expert in their field. And even though it's like a routine car chase towards the end, it's still a neat scene to see where he gets zapped in his Porsche. He ends up in a fountain, and he's kind of like on the run from the cops because he's the main bad guy. And it kind of devolves a little bit into where he dresses up as a cop and sneaks into where they're having this big conference where everybody's going to be talking about stuff. And there's the absurd commercials the computer is generating on its own, but because he and Scheme Goggles bad dude in there are kind of going at it or whatever, they actually are in the commercials. All these people are seeing, so it gets captured, but it's kind of like an ironic kind of thing to it as well.
That the very main thing in the scene where he's dealing with the bad guys trying to kill him with the guns. He's got the. It reminded me of the scene from The Man with the Golden Gun. And it was hiding behind stuff.
That's a great comparison. Yeah.
I popped when I saw this. I was like, dude, instead of having mirrors, you have the sets. He's hiding. He's hiding through stuff. And while this is going on, you're seeing people, because they're supposed to be putting on a show for people, investors, who are supposed to. And when they start seeing the bad guys, showing up with the guns there behind, and it was a commercial, they're laughing, and it's just basically ruining their product. And then there's while the bad guys in there with his henchman, the hitman, they're in there trying to basically silence this guy, but they're just making it worse. I just want to point out that Finney was wearing a guardsman, private security uniform. Wasn't an actual cop, but I said this movie, the suspense in this, it's an overall enjoyable movie. Yeah. Yes, there's some nudity in the very beginning, but like I said, when Cindy's in the machine being scanned for a duplicate by the computer, you don't see anything. Even when she takes off her clothes at her top, she crawls in, you don't see anything. And it's just one of those movies, you don't know what's going to happen until it happens. And I love those movies. Most movies are predictable and stuff, but
there's two things in here that stood out too. I honestly don't know if James Cameron, who's notorious for appropriating material, like a lot of artists are, when the model goes through to get her computer scan and she's standing there nude when she comes in, as the scan comes down into the chamber, she's got on one knee or whatever, and it's tastefully covering up her private areas, but she is completely nude and you see her entire body that way. But I'm going, oh, that's the Terminator pose, but this movie came before, and I'm going, oh, I wonder if that's where they got it from, because it just, I don't know, for some reason I went, oh, Terminator ripped this one off. And it's the other thing I wanted to mention too, for the real nerds out there, even though I'm not going to call this a sci-fi film, is when they're walking around in the building, and again, computers are not commonplace like they are now.
It's 1981.
The bad guy knows that somebody's trying to access some of these rooms by key cards, because he sees it pops up on the computer screen, and that's where he goes to chase them. And they're trying to get in a certain room that they don't have access. However, they have, and it had been introduced earlier, these metal lines running up and down that you'd go, oh, if you're in elementary school or primary school, that's where you would teach kids to walk on either side of the line or on them, if you're trying to teach them single file. But it's for the automated, the automated robots that come in and do the maintenance and cleaning stuff like that, do it. And I thought, wow, not too long ago in my local grocery store, for the very first time, I saw an automated robot cleaning, and I saw another one going up and down the aisles, scanning to see what they needed to buy and everything else there too. So it was neat that, again, 40 years ago, the idea of automation, even though Henry Ford's the one that really popularized it here in the States, and Michael Crichton kind of put it in the movie. He didn't do it in such a way where it's the focus, but I remember that and I'm like, oh my God, damn it, Michael Crichton, you're good.
It reminds you of just a droid you'd see in like in Star Wars or a Battlestar Galactica TV series, it's a maintenance machine going over the road, the hallways, doing repairs. Even you see that in Farscape, which is like, all these years later, 1999, 98, you see they have it on board, like, server droids, they're maintenance droids. So to see this, just going through, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm like, oh, watch, they're gonna follow this because it has to get into the other room. Because you see it empties like a little trash can. It grabs it, pulls it in, and then they're like, what? Because up to this point, like, these guys probably don't fool around with computers that much. He's a surgeon. She's an actress, model, whatever. So see, this is also all high tech, future tech. And then they follow it into the room, the liquor room, and that's where you learn about, I don't know if should we spoil this for people as far as this, or should I would say no. I'd say go watch this movie, and you'll get to see exactly how everything's happening, because it ruins the beginning for you if you find out.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely go check this out though. I can't stress enough. And when I first Rob told me, I was like, oh, there's girls in here. I'm like, oh, that's why Rob wants to watch it. But then I sat down. I was like, okay, it's Michael Crichton. I'll give it a chance. I was hooked. I could care less about the girls. The girls are a nice addition, yes, I won't lie. But the story, Albert Finney's acting in here, the girls being the models, and they're kind of airheads a little more, because they're all focused on being fame because we're in California, because he's a Beverly Hills surgeon. So like I said, the Porsche, dude, this just screams 80s movies to me. I just loved it. It was just like, man, to be a kid in that era, it just makes me want to go. If I could get a time machine, I'd go back there.
It definitely feels like it and looks like it. And I know we've covered some goofy action ones too, and some more serious ones occasionally. But definitely an 80s feeling film. The soundtrack's phenomenal. Overall, I think it's just an undeserved movie. It's one of the reasons why we wanted to cover here on the Xtreme Movie Show. And frankly, I didn't think you'd be interested in seeing it too, because I thought it might be a little bit too slow. And yes, there's beautiful women in here. They're lookers, which is the term, but that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
And that can be a distraction to suck you in. And I think the opening gambit, again, Crichton does such a great job of telling the story, and it's very obvious here in this film. Even though the film probably could have been a lot better, depending if you wanted to go a certain way with it, I still find it enjoyable and watchable. It's definitely overlooked.
Yeah, so some cool things about this. Crichton and all, he said, Holly Third, back in 1975, he said, he basically in an interview said he went to, back then he went to a Los Angeles computer company to figure out how he could create copies of in commercials without looking too ridiculous. A discovered company in Texas that's already doing it, called tomography, or tomography, whatever. And it became a reproduction of the Lad Company, and you find out later this is Leigh Taylor Young. This was her first film she did in 8 years. Apparently, she must have had a sabbatical or just maybe semi-retired. But I guess James Coburn had some words for this movie. He was kind of upset.
He didn't like it.
Because he basically said my part was pretty much on the cutting room floor, and he really pissed that film away. They had Albert Finney running around as security guards for him throughout the film, and it didn't make any sense. And he's like, it could have been a good picture, but it was all about how television controls. It was all about commercials, manipulate people to buy products, politicians, whatever. But they killed the film up for television print. I don't know why they did that. They spent bread on that picture too, and it was a $12 million production. He's like, it's not much back then. It wasn't that much to do that day, but it was a pretty big budget,
It feels a little bit like They Live at the end, where you can join them and you find out there's a whole nother society or whatever. And kind of like you're one man against this whole system. And Finney translates that well.
Like I said, apart from James Coburn and it's or Coburn, whatever you call it, this was actually really good. I mean, like I said, critics back then there's who was a critics back then? I hate that. People say well, the critics said this movie was this, or they say it's great. I've never gone by critics. I've usually found hidden gems of movies, and people say, "Oh, this movie sucks," and then I go to watch it. I was like, "Wow, this actually was really good." Even though all the Hollywood critics said, "Oh, it was tasteless. It's been done before." Blah blah blah. I'm like, dude, and like Rotten Tomatoes, who gives a crap about what Rotten Tomatoes says?
Well, again, it's a 40-year-old movie, and I will say this as we're wrapping up. The field of people reviewing movies was definitely considered a higher art form in a sense than it has been in the past 20, 30 years. I think Ebert even won a Pulitzer Prize. I don't know if it was for that or for something else, but there were very few of them, but they were nationally known. There's, Ebert and Siskel out of Chicago. You had a couple others too, and also in your local paper, you had one person that did that, and you would read their Friday morning, and you'd get up before going to school. If you're reading the paper, you'd see, okay, what's coming out this weekend? What was their reviews? And they would tell you about the film and what they liked, and they'd give it some kind of ranking. And everybody knows about Joe Bob and a few others, but they definitely took it a bit more seriously, but at the same time, I think the movie industry was a lot better back then in the 80s. Because to your point, where's the thrillers now?
Yep.
Yeah.
And this is really before the huge action movies too. If you think about it, those would come later.
It's before the blockbusters were starting to come into play here for the summers. Like with Jaws, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, all that kind of stuff. So you had a lot of movies being made that were still needing to find a market. And Albert Finney was a big name. He was not a nobody.
Yeah. You had Canon Films was just starting to get around.
Rex Reed is who I forgot. Yeah, because he was on there too, and he still does some. I think Maranya.
I think Canon Films was just getting around in the early 80s too.
Yeah, they were.
With Chuck Norris.
And a bunch of others. Yeah.
But like you said, critics, never go by critics. Don't even go by us. Take a gander. Look at the movie yourself, and sometimes you surprise yourself. I mean, I judged this movie right away by looking at it. I was like, this looks kind of dumb. But then I sat down and watched it. I was like, wow, I'm pleasantly surprised, A lot of times,
I think it's aged well. I think the set pieces look good.
And I know there are people like me, like, somebody says something that's really great. It tends to not make me want to go watch it because it means it's probably going to be overhyped and overrated. It just, eventually I will go sit down and watch it, but I'll wait till it's like $5 instead of paying $25 for it.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you liked it. I'm glad we got a decent audience tonight for it because, like I said, it's an understated movie that people get a chance to see.
It's Michael Crichton. That's the only reason I really watch it, because it's Michael Crichton. Because Michael Crichton puts out classic movies. Andromeda Strain was a movie I never really would have wanted to see, but then I sat down and watched it. Good movie.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody, if people think of Michael Crichton, oh, I mean, the Jurassic Park? Yeah, I love him. Like, have you seen anything before that? Because he's done a lot of good stuff.
Yeah. I liked him a lot. Good movie. Looker, 1981, Albert Finney, and a bunch of models of time, Playboy Playmates. It's a thriller. Go check it out. It's one of those mood movies. It fits really well late at night when you're just watching. If you got that 80s synthwave vibe going on in your head and you just want to chill. All right, RDV, thanks for showing up tonight. I'm glad you watched this for a first-time watch. That's pretty exceptional. Get that kind of feedback. You never know what you're going to get, and that's why we cover it. Thanks, Maranya, and everybody else that showed up tonight, Ed, whatnot. I'm sure you all have seen the movie. If you haven't, go check it out or maybe give it a rewatch. We'll check something out here next Tuesday night here on the Extreme Movie Show. For RDV and everybody else, thanks for watching, guys. Good night, and as always, stay extreme.
Later.